time. I call the member for Indi.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. And to the member for Braddon, thank you very much for those words. My vision for Indi is one where our communities and rural Australia is prosperous, caring and alive with opportunities for everybody. And being part of the process for implementing that vision is one of the key reasons why I'm in this federal parliament. I'm 100% committed to working in partnership with my community, business and governments to bring this vision to fruition. And of all the tools at the disposal of government and this parliament, the budget plays a key role in setting the parameters and creating the environment for that vision to be enacted. I also understand that the future is not some place we're going to. It's not a set destination. The future, in fact, is a place we are creating. And I believe that the paths to the future are made, not found, and the making of those pathways changes both the maker and the destination. That the what we do is important, and I also believe the how we do things is equally important. Mr Deputy Speaker, with these convictions, I'm committed to working closely with my community in my role as MP on both the what and the how of good governance. So consequently, over the 3 weeks since the budget, I've been talking with my community in multiple ways about the budget. I've been running listening posts, driving the caravan near and far across the valleys and towns of Indi. I've held meetings, walked the streets and gained a sense of what the people of Indi think about the Abbott government, the second budget, their hopes for it, their fears, their likes, their dislikes and their suggestions for improvement. I've called this process the Budget Impact Tour, or BIT, and tonight I'm pleased to present a summary of those findings to the House. A full report will be made available and distributed across the network and to my colleagues in early June. And together with kitchen table conversations and the Getting Cathy's Ear postcard, the BIT is one of the consultation strategies I'm using to ensure that I provide strong, fair and balanced representation on behalf of the people of Indi. So, Mr Deputy Speaker, in summary, there are 3 main themes gathered during this consultation. The first is the impact of the budget on regional Australia. The second is the impact of the budget on individuals, families and businesses. And third, the opportunities presented in this time of low interest rates and cheap money to invest in infrastructure in regional Australia. So to the budget in regional Australia. A major criticism of last year's budget was the lack of understanding, discussion and appreciation of the impact budget strategies would have on regional Australia. And following extensive discussion among my electorate, colleagues and in this place, at the end of March I presented to the House a private member's bill, the Charter of Budget Honesty Amendment Bill, which outlines key aspects of what a regional budget impact statement would address. And for the information of my colleagues in the House tonight, the key aspects of that bill were the publication of a Regional Australia statement which contains information about the likely impacts on regional Australia of key government initiatives or significant changes since the last financial year. The budget would have regard to the following: the economic, social and cultural and environmental impacts of government initiatives, the economic drivers for regional communities, the effect that government initiatives may have on regional communities due to lack of infrastructure, particularly mobile phone coverage, reliable internet connection, access to public transport, and the lack of access that people living in regional communities have to government services due to cost, long distances and time, and the effect that lack of competition in regional communities have on the cost of living and doing business in regional communities. And finally, the cost and difficulties involved in complying with regulatory requirements for people and businesses in regional communities. And Mr Deputy Speaker, well, I'm pleased that in this year's budget the government has responded to the call from regional Australia for more information and has tabled the Blue Book, which does outline key government initiatives. I do congratulate the government on this publication. I also note that there's no discussion in the Blue Book of the likely impacts on regional Australia of key government initiatives and the process made in addressing significant structural inequalities. So from my perspective, clearly this is a work in progress, and I will continue to lobby the government and advocate with relevant ministers on the importance of doing this analysis. And to the second part of my speech, the summary of feedback gained during the Budget Impact Tour. impact on individuals, families, communities and businesses. And to begin with the positives, the budget recognition and support for small business has been widely applauded, as outlined by the member for Braddon. Budget support for stronger communities through the Small Capital Projects Grant is seen as a positive initiative, and people are looking forward to seeing the detail in the guidelines. And the general sense that this budget was not as controversial as last year was seen to be more fair and has addressed some of the problems outlined in last year's budget. The largest particular area of comment, however, to me was taxation. So as I mentioned, there's strong support for changes to small business taxation, as well as support for changes to agricultural taxation, but a call to align these changes so that agriculture and farming both have immediate access. The current arrangement is that farmers have to wait for 2 years before they can claim the tax incentives. And while there's also been concern about the impact of bracket creep and the burden being carried by middle-class regional Australia, there was strong support for reviewing taxation, support for the taxation white paper and the related federation white paper. The second area of great concern was the impact of the budget on social security, changes to pensions, fear of more changes to pensions, the impact of changes to family benefits, maternity leave arrangements, pensions and changes to disability support have caused great concern. In the health area, changes to arrangements for funding aged care and in particular residential aged care packages, as well as ongoing concern about GP co-payments and what might happen in small rural communities where we have no bulk billing services. The area of telecommunications is an ongoing and consistent call for better access to mobile phone coverage. The government has an excellent program underway to address this issue, and there was great disappointment in my electorate that the budget failed to put more money into the mobile phone black spots program. And I will continue to advocate very strongly with the Minister that this needs to be done. Transport. Fears relating to the potential impact of the sale of the Australian Rail Track Corporation and what this might mean for ongoing train and rail maintenance on the Melbourne-Albury line was a constant concern, as well as the need for much more support for the inland freight route and the eventual funding of the high-speed rail. In agriculture, there was general disappointment in the time it's taking to release the agricultural white paper and the hope that recommendations in the white paper, when it is released, will be well funded. Particular mention was made of the importance of agricultural research and the need for a long-term strategic approach to investment in innovation, particularly in agriculture innovation. Mr Deputy Speaker, other issues canvassed included cuts to our aid budget and support for young people, particularly support for young people to make the transitions from school to work, work to university, university, town to city, city back to town. And there was real worry that the long-term implications of our cut to our aid budget would turn up in our rural and regional Australia as problems. So people have asked me to advocate with the Minister for Foreign Affairs to see what we can do, particularly about providing support to our near neighbours in the Pacific. So apart from these issues raised during the consultation process, I also had a series of discussions about the government commitment to regional Australia with the financial experts in my community, and a number of questions were raised and asked for consideration by the government. What would it take to get the government to seriously invest in infrastructure in regional Australia? With the low cost of money, the low interest rates, the question was asked, why doesn't the government borrow money to invest in infrastructure such as the high-speed rail, connectivity, telecommunications and regional services? I was also asked, why isn't there a national policy around decentralisation? Why are we getting only ad hoc tidbits of moving agricultural research to centres? We need a policy of decentralisation. And I was asked, what would we have to do to get such a policy in place? How do we grow service industries in regional areas? How do we really grow small business? What can we do to remove the impediments of cross-border anomalies and very specific taxes such as the payroll tax? I was asked to think about what we need to do to create incentive for regional development, what incentives are needed and how can government provide these. What would we really need to do to get the super funds to invest in regional infrastructure? Generally, the people of Indi were supportive of the government's attempt to manage the budget. However, they want a much greater appreciation of the impact of budget measures on regional Australia, and they want larger investment in regional infrastructure. They are worried about the slow pace of addressing the many mobile phone black spots and the lack of commitment to high-speed rail and public transport. The people of Indi are calling on the government for inspiration, for partnerships especially with young people, for the government to work with young people to enable them to become active participants in our new economy. They see opportunity for the government to provide aspiration, to really move with a sense of entitlement, to move from a sense of entitlement to a sense of innovation. There is so much more we could be doing, and Regional Australia wants to partner with government in being part of that innovation. Many constituents also commented on the important role of young people in regional Australia and the need to stem the export, the need to reach out to young people and offer them support, encouragement and mentoring in order for them to reach their potential and for them to become active participants in our regional economies. They said to me that young people don't need punishment, they need encouragement, they need the hand up. We need to be able to ensure that young people's energy, enthusiasm, vitality and skills can be used to help create a future that we all desire, a future that's full of prosperity, caring and is alive with opportunity. And if I could make a note regarding the member for Braddon's talk, he expressed perhaps a fear that our regional communities will be full of old people. Well, my sense is if we keep going in that direction, that's where we're headed. So I call on the government to not go in that direction, to actually pay attention to young people in regional Australia and encourage them to come and live in our communities, to open small businesses, to partake in higher education and to be active participants in our communities. So my final word is my hope that next year's Blue Book that concentrates on the government's budget and its impact on regional Australia will focus on the impact of how the budget has impacted on the lives of young people who live in regional Australia, how it's advanced education, how it's given them access to mobile phones and NBN, how it's given them access to public transport, how it's given them access to create jobs and innovative ways of doing agriculture. And finally, I hope that when we look at the budget, the balance of that particular budget, that it shows that we're in a surplus and that young people choose to come to live in regional Australia because that's the way we want to have it. Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker.